Hey guys, tonight we drift quietly into the moonlit roads of Edo, where you find yourself standing just behind a lone samurai as he moves through the hushed streets with the kind of calm confidence you can only fake when your robe is hiding a full miniature tea set. His sandals whisper across the packed dirt, lantern light flickers across wooden storefronts, and the whole city seems to breathe in a slow, rhythmic way that makes your shoulders drop a little, maybe even more than you meant them to. You probably won't survive this era, by the way. Not because of sword fights or dramatic duels, but because slippers were apparently optional, alleys were weirdly maze-like, and honestly you'd get lost before breakfast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the time where you're watching from. I love seeing our little sleepy community scattered across the world like lanterns on a dark shoreline. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk behind the samurai, your footsteps somehow syncing with his, as though the rhythm of Edo at night has already pulled you into its slower heartbeat. The wooden houses to your left lean in slightly, almost conspiratorially, and the bright paper lanterns hanging above certain doorways flicker in the light breeze. A few shutters crack open as curious townspeople peek at the late-night traveler, then slide shut again with the softest click. Respectful, but also nosy. Classic Edo. The samurai silhouette is tall, but not intimidating. More like the shape of someone who has carried too many responsibilities for too long and found ways to soften the edges. His sword stays at his hip, yes, but it barely sways because his gait is so measure-practiced. What does sway, just slightly, is a tiny lacquered box tucked into the fold of his obi. You only notice because it makes the faintest chick-tink sound when his foot meets the earth. That little noise is your introduction to the strangest accessory he owns, his portable tea kit. The air is cool, touched with the faint scent of charcoal from distant cooking stalls. Somewhere far behind you, a dog barks once, and then apparently decides that was enough contribution for the night. A light drizzle from earlier still clings to the rooftops, and every now and then a droplet slides from the eaves and lands with a soft tap. You hover beside the samurai now as he pauses at the edge of Ninebashi Bridge. It's nearly silent except for the deep, echoing croak of a night heron perched near the water. This bridge is the official starting point of the 5 routes of Japan, meaning if he's traveling tonight, he's technically launching himself into the heart of the country. But he doesn't seem rushed. He stops, looks over the rail, and exhales. You expect him to adjust his sword or maybe tighten his sandals. Instead, he gently taps that little lacquered box with his thumb, checking it the way modern people pat their pockets to confirm their phone hasn't disappeared into the void. It's a small gesture, but filled with intention. This isn't a weapon or a tool, something flashy. It's his comfort object, his personal ritual, his emotional Wi-Fi connection to calm. Historians still argue whether samurai tea habits were rooted primarily in Zen practice, or whether they developed first as a social flex, an elegant way to signal refinement in a world where everyone was obsessed with rank and appearances. What we do know, and what you watch unfold in slow motion right now, is that tea wasn't just a drink to these warriors. It was an anchor. A mainstream historical fact slips into place. In the Edo period, many samurai were more bureaucrats than battlefield fighters. Their swords were often symbols. Their days filled with paperwork, taxes, disputes, and a shocking amount of "please wait in this room until your superior acknowledges you." Tea became their pause button, a ritualized breather that offered structure, presence, and a moment to unclench their jaw. But here's your first quirky tidbit. Some samurai supposedly treated their tiny tea kits like spiritual good luck charms, believing that brewing a cup before travel helped warm the path ahead. Whether this was sincere belief or just poetic habit, no one is entirely sure. You watch your samurai touch the box again, and it's impossible not to think he belongs to that camp. He lifts his gaze toward the lantern dangling from the bridge's central post. The flame inside dances as if bowing to the night. You can see the reflection in his eyes, steady, warm, unhurried. The kind of light that makes you want to just sit down, take a breath, and forget the 100 half-finished tasks you left back in your own world. He starts walking again, and you follow him onto the road, leading toward Shinagawa. A pair of night patrol guards passes by, nodding respectfully at him. Even from a distance, you notice their eyes flick toward the little box on his belt. There's recognition there, maybe even understanding. Samurai carrying swords. Normal. Samurai carrying portable tea sets. That's when you know someone takes their chill time seriously. As the city thins, you approach rows of inns, their entrances glowing softly with warm lantern light. You hear the low murmur of travelers settling in for the night, and the rhythmic sweep of a shopkeeper brushing dust from his threshold. The samurai passes them all, choosing instead a quieter side path that curves toward the coast. His stride slows, not because he's tired, but because something about this moment is worth savoring. The moon rises higher, casting a silver sheen across the road. Every sound feels magnified yet mellowed. The distant surf, the clack of bamboo water spouts in some unseen garden, the chirping of night insects. You almost feel the weight of the night settling across your shoulders like a warm blanket. Then, unexpectedly, the samurai stops. He crouches beside a flat stone near the road, the kind commonly used as a traveler's rest point. Without a word, he unties the tiny box. The latches are delicate, crafted with the precision of someone who knew their owner would be opening them in the dark. He unfolds a palm-sized cloth. You lean closer, not too close because, boundaries, even in imaginary Edo, and watch as he arranges a miniature whisk, a tiny scoop, and a thimble-like tea bowl. They look like the world's calmest doll accessories, except they were forged by artisans who could probably make a perfect spoon out of a raindrop. There's no rush, no performance, just a man, the moon, and an absurdly cute tea kit. He heats a small bit of water from a traveler's flask. Yes, lukewarm at best, but that's the beauty of the ritual. Perfection isn't the point. Presence is. He scoops a little powdered tea, stirs with slow wrist motions, and you watch steam curl upward like it's shy about entering the cold air. He lifts the bowl, inhales, and for a moment everything, the bridge, the city, the centuries, feels suspended. You're not here as a tourist. You're here as a quiet companion, silently sharing the calm. The samurai drinks. His shoulders relax. You swear he smiles, just a little, before packing the pieces away with careful reverence. On the road again, his steps are even softer. And you? You're walking into deeper stillness, one tiny tea whisk at a time. You follow the samurai as he steps back onto the quiet road, and already you can sense the shift in him. That tiny cup of tea wasn't just a roadside break. It was like watching someone quietly reboot their soul. His breathing slows, his posture loosens, and even the faint clink of the tea kit grows softer, as if it, too, has mellowed out. You trail behind him, realizing something important. To a samurai, tea isn't decor, or a hobby, or I guess I'll try matcha because my coworker won't stop talking about it moment. It's armor, quiet armor, for a world where tension lurks in every doorway and eyebrow raise. The path winds between clusters of pine trees, their shadows stretching long and thin across the road. The air smells faintly of ocean salt now, mixed with the earthy aroma of wet bark. As the breeze brushes past, you watch the samurai lift a hand to his sleeve, adjusting the fold like someone preparing for another round of social expectations. Because here in Edo, Japan, most conflicts aren't solved with swords. They're solved with stamina, etiquette, and the patience of someone who has definitely attended too many mandatory meetings. A mainstream historical fact floats through your mind as you walk. By the height of the Edo period, samurai had transitioned from warriors to administrators. They wrote reports, mediated disputes, collected taxes, gave audience to villagers, and attended endless formal gatherings. Daily life was less dramatic battlefield charge, and more paperwork marathon, where everyone pretends they aren't exhausted. And walking into any room meant carrying rank, honor, and reputation like invisible luggage. This is where the tea comes in. Your samurai pauses at a stone lantern glowing faintly beside a crossroads. He places his palm on the warm surface, steadying himself. You notice how his fingers hover for a moment afterward, as if grounding himself on purpose, not unlike how you probably brace yourself before awkward phone calls or holiday dinners. Then, with a slow exhale, he continues walking. The little tea kit stays snug in his robe, comforting in its presence. He's heading toward a residential district now, where the homes belong to fellow samurai, men who live in close quarters with their families, subordinates, and neighbors who all expect a certain level of composure. And that's the thing about this society. Composure is mandatory. Outside, he must bow just right, speak just right, smile just right. Inside, he's expected to embody calm dignity, even during family squabbles or when the rice harvest tax forms pile up like a bad joke. If you slip, someone notices. If you snap, someone reports. If you dare show frustration, someone's going to mutter about improper samurai bearing. This era is basically one long performance review. Historians still argue whether samurai adopted their tea rituals primarily as emotional regulation or simply because the aristocrats before them did it first and they didn't want to look uncultured. Maybe both are true. Human motivation hasn't changed much. You know how it goes. Is this meaningful? Or do I just not want to be the weird one who doesn't have a tiny tea kit? Another soft breeze passes, carrying the faint sound of a shamisen being played somewhere behind sliding doors. The melody drifts lazily across the street, adding just enough ambience to make you wonder why all neighborhoods can't have live nighttime soundtracks. The samurai tilts his head slightly, listening. The corners of his mouth lift again. You catch that small change, the way he lets the music meet the calm already settled inside him. And there it is, his quiet armor at work. Inside that tiny kit is the power to smooth the edges of a long day, to soften stress before it spills into something sharper. It's not just tea. It's a ritual, a reset, a reminder. Every time he brews a cup, he rehearses the same sequence. Unfolding, scooping, whisking, tasting. It's the one place where he doesn't have to choose his words carefully or anticipate anyone else's reaction. It's a pocket-sized sanctuary. Now here comes your quirky tidbit. Some historical writings claim that a few samurai practiced stealth tea, brewing tiny cups in hidden corners of their estates so no one would know they were taking breaks. Essentially the Edo period version of hiding in the pantry to snack without sharing. The thought of a high-ranking warrior hunched behind a sliding door whisking matcha in secret is almost too delightful. The samurai turns down another lane, this one lined with low walls blanketed in creeping vines. Candles glow behind translucent shoji screens, throwing soft shapes against the paper. You hear murmurs of conversation drifting from within. Families settling down, children being nudged towards sleep, someone laughing quietly at an inside joke. Everything feels contained and gentle, like the city has curled itself into the coziest possible shape. Your samurai approaches a house that's slightly larger than the others. A wooden plaque displays his clan crest. Simple, elegant. Before stepping inside, he pauses again. His hand drifts to the tea kit. He doesn't open it this time, just presses his fingers lightly against the lacquered surface. You can almost hear the thought forming. You've got this. Another tiny gesture. Another layer of armor secured. As he slides open the door, you peek inside with him. The entryway is tidy, with a small arrangement of seasonal flowers resting in a ceramic vase. The light inside is warm, the kind of glow that makes everything look gentler than it really is. A woman, likely a family member, approaches with a calm smile. A child runs past holding a wooden top. A servant waits discreetly in the corner to help with his belongings. From the outside, it looks peaceful, a sanctuary after a long night's walk. But you know the truth. Expectations don't end at the door. Here, too, he must be composed, responsible, patient, honorable, attentive. The weight of being a samurai never drops. It simply redistributes. You watch him step inside with a steady breath, and just before the door closes behind him, his hand drifts back one last time to the tiny tea kit. It's almost imperceptible, but you catch it. A reminder to himself that no matter what the night holds, discussions, duties, surprises, he carries his calm with him. And you? You carry it too now, just by walking at his side. You step into the next stretch of the samurai's evening, not as an intruder, but as a quiet shadow at his side, moving seamlessly from his doorway into the deeper folds of his world. He has barely set down his sandals before you see him slip that tiny lacquered box, his portable chaji, back into his grasp, almost absent-mindedly. Not because he intends to use it right this moment, but because its presence reassures him like a familiar rhythm you hum without thinking. And tonight, you're finally close enough to examine it properly. The chaji he carries is miniature, absurdly miniature, shrunk down from the tools of a formal tea ceremony into something that fits neatly into a robe fold. Imagine a tea room the size of your pinky nail. That's basically what he's working with. Everything inside is precise, delicate, and so ridiculously tiny that you can't help thinking some artisan spent years perfecting a whisk no bigger than a leaf stem. You swear you can feel your eyes straining, even though you're not the one who has to use it. As he steps deeper into the house, you drift behind him through a narrow hallway where faint candlelight catches the edges of sliding doors. Somewhere a kettle simmers softly over coals, just enough warmth to keep the home feeling lived in. The air carries hints of cedar wood and incense, a little grounding, a little dreamy. The samurai stops in a quiet side room, his personal space, or at least as personal as it gets in a household where privacy is optional and walls are basically controlled paper. He kneels, and there, on a low wooden chest, he opens the tiny tea kit for a quick inspection. The hinged lid rises smoothly. Inside, arranged like the world's calmest dollhouse display, lies the miniature chashaka scoop, the folded silk cloth for purifying the bowl, the impossibly small bamboo whisk, and a tea container shaped like a thumb-sized jar. All of this next to a bowl barely wide enough for 2 fingers. You watch him tilt the pieces in the candlelight, checking for cracks or dust, almost like checking gear before a long journey. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. During the Edo period, samurai often carried tea utensils during travel because formal tea gatherings weren't confined to tea rooms. Ceremonies, formal or improvised, could occur in gardens, roadsides, guest houses, battlefield camps, or unexpected diplomatic encounters. Being unprepared wasn't just embarrassing. It could be a subtle insult or a sign of poor education. The tea kit wasn't just a tool. It was a passport to being socially functional. But here's your quirky tidbit. Some preserved kits from the era include secret compartments, tiny drawers or sliding panels used to hide charms, fortunes, or even emergency herbs. Your samurai set has exactly one of these. You didn't expect it, but he nudges the lower corner, revealing an even smaller tucked-away compartment. Inside rests a tiny sliver of polished stone, no bigger than a sunflower seed. He touches it with his thumb, murmuring something under his breath, though you can't catch the words. Maybe it's a good luck talisman. Maybe it's something sentimental. Historians still argue whether talismans like these were widely used, or whether they're rare personal quirks of certain samurai. And you're watching the debate unfold right in front of you. The samurai exhales softly, closes the hidden compartment, and begins wiping each piece with deliberate care. You notice how his movements slow, smoothing from task to meditation. Even if he's just inspecting, the ritual wraps him in calm. There's a rhythm in his gestures. Unfold the cloth, wipe the scoop, brush the whisk, breathe. You can practically feel your own pulse easing as he works. The tea kit, despite its tiny scale, carries the same symbolic weight as its full-size counterpart. Every motion mirrors the original ceremony. The respect, the intentionality, the "I really need a break but want it to look elegant" energy. You watch him reposition the whisk with the tip facing upward, the scoop lay diagonal, the bowl centered. Anyone else might call it obsessive. But in this world, it's discipline, it's serenity, it's subtle self-preservation. He gathers the pieces again and, without warning, stands and leaves the room. You follow quickly, passing more sliding doors until he stops at a storage alcove. There, he retrieves a cloth-wrapped bundle, a slightly larger version of the kit. When he unwraps it, you see extra miniature vessels, a tiny kettle, and even a collapsible windscreen. He's preparing for travel. Not tonight, but soon. And here's the thing. Samurai preferred their tools consistent across settings. Whether in a tea room or on a mountain pass, the ritual had to feel familiar. He sits again, comparing the 2 kits, swapping certain pieces. You watch him place 2 whisk variants side by side, one with finer teeth, one slightly rougher. He chooses the finer one, tapping it gently on his palm as if testing its voice. Then he picks up a micro kettle, a palm-sized iron wonder with a beautifully curved spout, and you swear it weighs more than it looks. He checks the handle. You hear the soft click of its lid, and you marvel at the idea that someone forged this using traditional metalworking techniques. The craftsmanship alone could calm a panicked soul. Another debate flickers into your mind. Historians still argue whether samurai preferred extremely small kits for travel efficiency, or because the act of brewing from tiny tools required extra focus, effectively making it a mindfulness exercise. Watching him now, you start leaning toward the second theory. The smaller the tools, the more careful the action. The more careful the action, the more the mind relaxes into the present moment. It's the Edo period version of assembling tiny model kits to unwind. Except instead of airplanes or ships, you're working with utensils curated for spiritual composure. Your samurai closes the larger travel cloth and ties it neatly. Then he pauses, resting both hands lightly on top of the bundle. His gaze softens. It's the look of someone who knows the next journey will be long, but believes that, with these little objects by his side, he'll carry calmness into even the most chaotic moments. A joke slips into your mind uninvited. If stress relief were measured in millimeters, this man would be a Zen master. He finally stands, tucks the miniature kit back into his robe, and extinguishes the candle with a slow wave of his hand. Darkness settles gently around you, quiet but not empty. You follow him to the hallway as he slides the door closed behind him. Somewhere a child giggles in another room. A pot lid rattles faintly as someone stirs late-night broth. Everything is ordinary and extraordinary at the same time, because now you see it through the lens of that tiny Chaji. It's not just a kit. It's a center of gravity he carries with him. You continue moving with him deeper into the house, already knowing this ritual will resurface again, and soon, in ways you haven't yet seen. You follow the samurai as he steps quietly back outside. The air cooler now, the neighborhood muffled under a late-night hush that feels almost padded. The moon hangs high like a patient overseer, illuminating the road ahead with a pale, silver glow. You're farther from the bustle of Edo proper now, drifting with him toward the open routes where travelers slip between towns in soft clusters or in solitary silence. This time, he's heading toward the roadside platforms, those curious raised wooden planks that the travel paths like forgotten stages meant for the gentlest performances imaginable. These platforms, at first glance, look like ordinary resting spots, simple, sturdy, nothing special. But you quickly realize they're more than benches for tired legs. They're little pockets of pause where samurai, merchants, monks, and wandering storytellers would kneel, unpack their bundles, and sometimes, if the mood struck, host impromptu tea moments. Not full ceremonies, not elaborately choreographed displays of refinement, but small, grounding rituals carved out of the dusty rhythm of travel. Your samurai steps onto one now, his sandals making a soft wooden thump, the tiniest echo bouncing away into the night. He kneels with familiarity, settling into a posture that feels practiced, not stiff. The platform overlooks a stretch of countryside road that wanders into the dark like a ribbon of ink. Fireflies blink lazily among the reeds, their lights rising and falling like sleepy little lanterns trying their best. He removes the tea kit again. Not the larger travel bundle this time, just the same compact Chaji tucked into his robe. It seems almost too small for the setting, like a magic trick waiting to happen. You can hear the faint clink as the box opens, each sound amplified in the quiet. He spreads his cloth on the platform. The moment he does, time seems to adjust itself around him, stretching out like a cat getting comfortable. A mainstream historical fact you recall: Edo period roads were heavily regulated, with designated checkpoints where travelers had to present papers proving their identity and purpose. These checkpoints could be stressful. Officials were strict, slow, and occasionally grumpy in that "I haven't had my tea yet" kind of way. Samurai often paused before these gates to compose themselves, centering their minds through a quick, refined brew. They didn't want to appear irritated or frazzled in front of guards who had the power to delay them indefinitely. And where would they pause? On platforms exactly like this. Now comes your quirky tidbit. Some travelers wrote in diaries that certain platforms felt lucky, claiming the tea brewed there tasted sweeter or felt lighter. One traveler even insisted the tea foam rose into perfect circles only at those locations. an oddly poetic belief that you're half convinced the samurai here might share. He certainly treats the platform with a kind of reverence, smoothing the cloth more carefully than necessary. You watch as he scoops a small portion of powdered tea with that delicate chashiko, then pours a bit of warm water from a flask he carries. It's not hot enough for a formal ceremony, but that doesn't bother him. This isn't about impressing anyone. This is about settling his thoughts before he encounters the checkpoint waiting a few hundred paces ahead. You can see the glow from its lanterns flickering faintly in the distance. Historians still argue whether these roadside tea moments were considered official parts of tea culture or more of a practical, traveler-specific custom. Some insist they were widely accepted. Others say they were slightly frowned upon. Too casual, too improvised. But here, watching the samurai whisk his matcha under the soft glow of fireflies, you feel how unnecessary the debate is. Rituals evolve where they're needed. He holds the tiny bowl to his lips and takes one slow sip. His breathing steadies instantly. He doesn't close his eyes. He just softens them, letting the night settle around him like a second robe. And you feel yourself softening with him, your own breath sinking with his almost automatically. It's remarkable how even observing a calm ritual can pull your nerves into alignment, like you're being tuned alongside him. When he finishes, he doesn't pack the kit immediately. Instead, he lets the moment linger, scanning the landscape, the silhouette of distant hills, the line of trees whispering with the breeze, the lantern glow ahead. This waiting, this quiet checking of the world around him, feels just as important as the tea itself. Then, with delicate precision, he wipes the tiny bowl, folds his cloth, and returns everything to its lacquered home. The little lid closes with a soft click that feels like the final punctuation of a very gentle sentence. He stands, stretching his legs slightly. You notice a small smile at the corners of his mouth. Not a dramatic grin, just the kind that signals readiness. Whatever lies ahead at that checkpoint, he'll meet it with composure, so polished it's practically reflective. As he steps off the platform, you hear soft voices approaching, a pair of merchants heading the other direction, carrying crates strapped to their backs. They nod at him, then at you, even though they obviously can't see you. The platform creaks as they pass by. Another team man, one of them mutters approvingly. The samurai's eyebrows lift just barely, amused but silent. You continue walking with him toward the checkpoint, the road widening slightly. Lanterns sway from wooden posts, casting warm light on the officer stationed there. A guard steps forward, posture rigid. You feel a slight tension, same as any traveler would. The samurai reaches into his robe, producing his travel papers with calm grace. You notice the tea kit still nestled inside, untouched but present. The guard inspects his documents, glances at the crest on his clothing, then steps aside. "Safe travels," he says, bowing slightly. The samurai returns the bow, his expression serene. It's impossible not to see the role the tea played in smoothing this interaction. A centered mind makes for a centered presence. The guards read composure the way modern airport staff read body language. It matters. Once past the checkpoint, your samurai looks ahead at the open road. The countryside yawns out in quiet layers. Rice fields shimmering faintly under moonlight, a distant village tucked behind low hills, and the long, dark stretch of the Decado that will carry him to his next destination. You walk beside him as he moves forward with steady steps, the tiny tea kit tapping gently against his side, soft, rhythmical, reassuring. Like a heartbeat he carries outside his body, and the road, long and winding, feels suddenly welcoming. As the samurai continues along the moonlit Decado, the road begins to shift, not physically, but in atmosphere. The countryside opens wider, the horizon pulling itself gently over the earth like pale silk. You can sense, even before he does, that he's moving toward a more populated area. The air carries the faintest hint of wood smoke and miso broth from a village ahead, though it's still too distant to seem more than a smudge of shadows. But before reaching any settlement, there's something else waiting along this stretch of road. An old Ichirizuka, a mound marking the distance to Edo. Most of these markers were simple earth piles lined with trees, often paired like sentinels. They told travelers how far they had come, how far still remained. This one rises just slightly off the roadside, the twin mounds softened by moss, their old trunks twisting upward like guardians who've seen centuries of footsteps pass by. The samurai pauses, not out of fatigue, but out of habit. Distance markers in the Edo period weren't simply functional. They were psychological checkpoints, a way of understanding your journey, not by emotion, but by measurement. And in the strict Confucian-inspired structure of the era, that kind of external order mattered. He rests his hand on one of the tree trunks, fingers brushing the rough bark. For a moment, he looks like someone touching an old friend. A mainstream historical fact slips into your mind. Many Ichirozuka were destroyed during modernization in the Meiji era. Very few survive today. Back then, though, they were essential travel companions. Samurai, merchants, and pilgrims alike took comfort in their consistency. Every ri, another pair of mounds, another quiet reassurance that the world, for all its unpredictability, had structure. But here's where things get unexpectedly quirky. You've read accounts of travelers who swore these markers had personalities. Some were believed to be energetic, filling passers-by with renewed spirit. Others were considered temperamental, best avoided at night, lest you attract wandering spirits or unlucky drafts. This one, with its soft moss and sturdy posture, seems firmly in the gentle elder category. The samurai doesn't believe in superstitions, but he respects the places where countless travelers have paused, breathed, and reset. And so, he kneels here, this time not for tea, but for stillness. He sits back on his heels and closes his eyes, letting the night wash through him. The breeze shifts, carrying the faint song of insects, the distant splash of a frog somewhere in a rice paddy, and the murmur of his own quiet mind. You sit beside him in an echo of his posture, and for a moment, the mound feels like a shared anchor. When he rises again, his expression has changed, not dramatically, but with a clearer focus. The kind of clarity that comes when you know exactly how far you've come and how far you still wish to go. As he takes a few steps forward, the road curves slightly left, revealing a silhouette on the roadside that you hadn't noticed before, a small yadoya, perched on a gentle rise. Its paper lantern hangs from a crooked wooden pole, the light flickering erratically as if waving you in. A weathered signboard swings lazily beneath it. This isn't a bustling, official post town. No checkpoint, no crowd, just a tiny family run and meant for travelers caught between long stretches of road. The kind of place where people come to rest their legs, share news, or drink sake too cheap to question. But as the samurai approaches, he stops, because something unusual is happening. A woman stands outside the inn, kneeling over a low brazier where steam billows into the night like soft ghosts. She's whisking something in a small bowl, not food but tea. Her movements are steady but faintly clumsy, not ceremonial, more like someone trying to imitate what she'd once seen done properly. The samurai watches her for a moment, curious but silent. You do too. The brazier crackles softly. The steam glows orange in the lantern light. The woman lifts the bowl, grimaces, and mutters to herself in frustration. She notices him only when she looks up to sigh, and nearly jumps. Forgive me. I didn't expect anyone else on the road this late. He bows politely. My apologies. I did not mean to startle you. She glances at the bowl, and then laughs sheepishly. I'm trying to make tea like the travelers do. Proper tea. But it keeps coming out bitter or thin, or both. She shakes her head. We get tired men stopping here every night, asking if we serve tea. I like to give them something better than boiled leaves. Your samurai considers this. Then, for the first time in your journey, he reaches into his robe not to steady himself, not out of habit, but for someone else. He pulls forward the small lacquer box. The woman's eyes widen. Is that? He kneels beside her. May I? She nods without hesitation, shifting aside and watching him with an intensity usually reserved for storytelling nights or festival dances. He lays out the cloth with deliberate simplicity, not ceremony, but intention. He shows her how much powder to use, how to angle the wrist, how to let the water fall instead of splashing. His movements slow, gentle, and the woman mirrors him, her posture unconsciously straightening. Steam rises between them like a visible thread connecting teacher and learner. You don't need perfection, he says quietly. Only attention. She repeats the motion. This time, the foam forms smoother. She laughs softly in disbelief. You feel something warm unfolding in the space between them. Not romance, not even friendship, but shared humanity expressed through craft. A passing of calm from one traveler to another. When she tastes the tea, her eyes soften. It's good. He nods. Then serve it. She stands, bowing slightly, deeper than etiquette demands. Thank you, traveler. Your journey must be guided by good spirits. He gives a modest smile. Only by tea. The woman laughs, the sound bright in the quiet night. Before she returns inside, she gestures toward the inn. Rooms are simple, but clean, and the futons are warm. The samurai glances at the road ahead, the moon climbing higher, the distance stretching long into darkness. Then he looks at the inn again. He steps forward, and you follow him inside. You step through the low wooden doorway, ducking just slightly as the samurai does, and immediately the atmosphere shifts. The inn is small, humble to the point of charming, but it feels like stepping into a warm pocket of the world. Light from 2 oil lamps pools softly across the tatami floor, flickering against the shoji screens that divide the rooms. Everything smells faintly of cedar, soot, and something simmering in a pot over a back hearth. The innkeeper, a stout older man with kind eyes and a towel slung over one shoulder, looks up from arranging bedding. A traveler, and a late one at that. His voice is gravelly but warm, the kind of tone that suggests he's heard thousands of stories from strangers and never grown tired of them. The road isn't kind after dark. Come, sit, warm yourself. Your samurai bows politely. I don't wish to trouble you. Trouble? The innkeeper laughs. If travelers didn't trouble me, I'd have no business. He gestures toward a low table. As the samurai moves to sit, you slip into a parallel spot beside him, imagining the tatami giving subtly under your weight. The inn feels safe, wrapped in the sort of ordinary coziness that immediately drains tension from your shoulders. Outside, the night stays crisp and dark, but here the world is soft-edged and welcoming. Before long, the woman from outside reappears, carrying 2 steaming cups. She sets one before the samurai with an unmistakable pride, the slightest flourish in her wrist, as if presenting a treasure. Your lesson wasn't wasted, she says quietly. I tried again. He lifts the cup, the scent rising to meet you. Earthy, grassy, calming. He doesn't gulp, doesn't sip too carefully. He drinks in a steady, appreciative way that communicates everything. Respect for her effort, acknowledgement of the craft, simple enjoyment. And the woman beams. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Roadside inns like this, Menshuku and small Hagoya, were essential to Edo period travel. Many were family-run, offering simple meals, shared baths, and humble sleeping spaces. Not luxurious, not spacious, but dependable outposts along the sprawling travel network. But this place has its own oddity, a fringe tidbit you wouldn't expect. The innkeeper gestures to a small shelf on the wall, lined with smooth stones. Each stone is marked with a traveler's name in brushstroke ink. Guests leave a stone when they depart. He explains when he notices your curious glance. For luck, for remembrance, for whatever reason suits them. Some say it keeps the road spirits friendly. He chuckles. Historians still argue whether traditions like this came from old mountain worship or just bored locals with too much free time. The samurai studies the stones with mild interest. You can sense his mind drifting briefly, considering the idea of leaving a mark somewhere. But his life isn't the kind that lingers. Stones belong to people seeking roots. He walks paths without expecting anchors. The innkeeper soon brings a small tray of food, rice, pickles, and a modest portion of miso soup. It's not fancy, he says, but it's warm. The samurai bows again. Warm is enough. As he eats, the innkeeper settles across from him. This is the moment every innkeeper looks forward to. The evening conversation, when roads converge into stories. He rubs his hands together. So, what brings you along the Takedo this late in the season? The samurai takes a measured moment before answering. Not secrecy, just thoughtfulness. An obligation, he says simply. The innkeeper nods with the understanding of someone who knows that samurai rarely explain more than they intend. Well, whatever your business, spirit's willing, you'll complete it. But be careful. There are bandits rumored near the river crossing. You feel the samurai's mind track that note. Cautious, evaluating, but not fearful. If anything, he's more concerned about protecting his tea kit than himself. A tiny kit that bandits would probably ignore, ironically. The woman wipes down another table across the room, listening with half an ear. You sense her lingering curiosity about the samurai, about the tea, about the world beyond this little inn. Perhaps she's never left this stretch of road. Perhaps she dreams of it. The innkeeper leans closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Between you and me, I've heard stranger things than bandits lately. Travelers say they've seen a wandering monk with a giant pot strapped to his back. Claims he brews fortune-telling tea. He snorts. Nonsense, of course. The samurai raises an eyebrow. Not because he believes it, but because the image is undeniably vivid. A monk lumbering down the road like a philosophical turtle. You feel a laugh threaten your own throat. The innkeeper continues, warming to his storytelling mood. One merchant swore the monk predicted he'd lose his sandal in a puddle. And then he did, right outside my door. He gestures dramatically toward the entrance. Still, a broken sandal isn't exactly spiritual insight. The samurai's lips quirk. Perhaps the monk simply knew merchants walk carelessly. The innkeeper slaps his knee. Exactly. Someone gets it. The conversation drifts into easy humor, the kind that relaxes the muscles in your jaw and settles your breathing. The tea in your imaginary cup cools, sending soft warmth through your hands. And for a little while, you simply rest in the gentle domesticity of travel, the one thing even a warrior can appreciate. Eventually, the samurai finishes his meal. The innkeeper stands, stretching his back. Your room is ready. Simple but private. The samurai rises, bowing. The woman gives a subtle nod of thanks for the lesson, for the company, for sharing a moment of craft that broke the monotony of her evening. He follows the innkeeper down a narrow hallway. You trail behind him, feeling the tatami soften each footstep. The hallway glows dimly from a single lamp. Its shadows sway gently, as if rocking you toward rest. At the last room on the left, the innkeeper slides open the shoji panel. Inside is a neatly laid futon, a folded blanket, and a small clay dish for washing. Nothing fancy, everything sincere. You must be tired, the innkeeper says. Sleep well. The road will still be there in the morning. The samurai bows deeply. Thank you. The door slides closed. Inside the quiet room, the samurai kneels and begins to unwind, loosening his clothing, removing his short sword, placing it neatly beside the futon. And finally, with the care of someone handling something precious, he lifts the tiny tea kit from his robe and sets it beside him. He doesn't open it, doesn't use it, just places it within arm's reach. Because even in sleep, calm must be close. You settle into your own imaginary futon, mirroring the stillness of the room, feeling the warmth of the enwrap around you like a gentle blanket. The lamp fades, the night deepens, and the story drifts onward. You wake, or rather, the samurai wakes, and you rise with him into the softest, earliest suggestion of morning. Not sunlight, not yet, just that pale, bluish tint that settles over the world moments before dawn decides whether it's actually going to show up. The inn is silent, except for a faint crackling somewhere distant. Probably the innkeeper stirring embers back to life. The samurai sits up smoothly, without the clumsy stiffness you and I would absolutely display after sleeping on a futon with questionable spinal support. He adjusts his clothing, his expression composed but alert. Even in this cozy quiet, a warrior never wakes carelessly. One of the shoji panels glows faintly, just the soft spill of the hallway lamp, left burning through the night. You can almost feel the chill in the air, the kind that's sharp enough to wake you, but gentle enough to feel clean. The tiny tea kit rests exactly where he left it, untouched, but comfortingly present. He picks it up with the kind of familiarity that tells you he's done this thousands of times, long before you joined him. The lacquered wood gleams faintly in the half-light. It's small enough to cup entirely in one hand, yet heavy with significance. He places it into his robe as if tucking away a small piece of calm. When he slides open the door and steps into the hallway, the innkeeper is already waiting, kneeling with a pot of rice porridge warming beside him. Early riser, I see, the man says, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The road calls, the samurai replies. The innkeeper nods knowingly. Travelers, especially samurai, treat time differently. Mornings are for distance, afternoons for peace, evenings for acceptance. And nights, well, nights are for whatever the world decides. The woman appears moments later, tying back her hair in a loose knot. Before you go, she says shyly, I made tea again, the way you showed me. She pours from a simple spouted pot. Nothing ceremonial, nothing fancy. But the aroma is unmistakably balanced. Not too bitter, not watery, just right. The samurai accepts the cup and takes a slow sip. Good, he says simply. Her face brightens in a way that almost warms the hallway. I practiced after you went to sleep. Practice, he says, is the quiet companion of skill. You don't say this out loud, of course, but internally you're like, wow, okay, sensei. Calm down before you accidentally start mintering the entire inn. They share a final bow, and then the samurai steps toward the exit. You slip after him, the floorboards whispering beneath your steps. The innkeeper calls out, safe travels, and watch for that monk with the giant kettle. The samurai pauses, looks back, and says in the gentlest deadpan, I'll be sure to ask him for a sandal reading. The innkeeper laughs like that's the best thing he's heard all week. Outside, the world is cold enough to prickle against your skin. Fog curls low over the fields, layered like drifting silk. Dew glistens on the grass, catching the light of the rising sun that still hides behind the ridge. The road ahead feels quieter than last night's winding path. The samurai moves along it with confident, easy strides, and you notice something subtle about his posture, something loosened during his stay. Perhaps it was the warmth of the inn, perhaps the student he unexpectedly found, or maybe it was simply the comfort of a clean futon after too many miles. As you both take in the quiet morning, you recall a mainstream historical fact. Travel during the Edo period followed a strict rhythm enforced by daylight. Most travelers avoided the road at night. It wasn't illegal, but it was unwise. Too many risks in the dark, from uneven paths to unsavory characters. That's why small inns dotted the great routes. But here's the quirky twist. Some inns developed reputations not for safety or comfort, but for unusual services. There were inns where travelers could get their fortunes told by cats. Yes, really, cats were thought to sense spirits. Other inns claimed to serve water from mythical springs that made the road shorter, though in reality, they were just near cold mountain streams. Historians still argue whether these gimmicks were rooted in folk belief or just clever marketing by bored innkeepers trying to lure customers. Your samurai, of course, would never fall for a tea fortune teller or a prophetic cat. But you? Let's be honest. You'd absolutely ask the cat for financial advice. As the morning brightens, the path begins sloping gently downhill, leading toward the sound of rushing water. A river crossing lies ahead, a wide, swift current with a wooden footbridge arching over it. But today something's off. The bridge appears unusually crowded. A group of travelers waits anxiously at the entrance. Farmers with baskets, merchants with luggage slung over their backs, a scholar clutching scrolls, as if moisture might erase entire philosophies. They're clustered together, murmuring nervously. The samurai approaches, and a young merchant notices him. Ah, sir, they've halted crossing. You notice the bridge is roped off at the near end, with two local guards standing stiffly, spears planted in the dirt. Why? The samurai asks. The merchant gestures helplessly. Someone spotted a structure upstream that wasn't there yesterday. They say it might be debris from the mountains. He lowers his voice. Or something built. The samurai's eyes narrow, but only slightly. You can tell he's assessing, not panicking. He steps closer to the guards. One guard bows deeply. Forgive the inconvenience. The bridge is unsafe until we determine what's drifting toward us. The other adds, a chunk of an old shrine roof came down last year and nearly wiped out the walkway. We can't risk it again. The current churns aggressively beneath the planks, water slapping hard against the supports. Whatever is coming will be here soon. The samurai watches the water. You follow his gaze. Then you see it, far upstream. but moving faster than you'd like. A strangely shaped object rides the current. Broad, wooden, almost round. The merchant squints. Is that a bath? And yes, it absolutely appears to be a bathtub. A large wooden soaking tub, spinning lazily like it has all the time in the world. You hear a ripple of confused whispering among the travelers. The scholar mutters, "Perhaps it fell from a hot spring inn." Another traveler murmurs, "Or it belongs to that kettle monk." Historians still argue whether monks actually traveled with bathing tubs, or whether tales like this were just exaggerations fueled by sake and boredom. Either way, the tub glides closer, bumping lightly against a rock, spinning elegantly like a dancer pirouetting through danger. The samurai exhales quietly through his nose, a soft, amused disbelief. Not annoyance, just acceptance that the world contains oddities you can't predict. You feel the corners of your mouth twitch. When the tub finally collides with the bridge supports, the impact is surprisingly gentle. The guards watch carefully. Nothing splinters. Nothing cracks. The tub simply bumps once, twice, and then, because the universe has a sense of humor, gets stuck. Perfectly. Like a cork. Silence falls. Then the innkeeper's voice echoes in your memory. Watch out for that monk with the giant kettle. You almost lose it. One guard scratches his head. "Sir, what should we do?" The samurai steps forward, kneels at the water's edge, and grips the rim of the tub. Muscles shift beneath his sleeves as he steadies himself. And with a smooth, decisive motion, he lifts. Water cascades off the base as he heaves it upright and frees the current. The tub swings wide, caught briefly in swirling eddies before gliding downstream into its next adventure. The guards stare impressed. The scholar mumbles something about symbolic purification. The merchant claps once. A strong man and a polite one. Luck follows him. The samurai simply inclines his head. The bridge is cleared moments later, and as everyone begins crossing, the world feels just a little stranger and a little more amusing than it did at sunrise. Crossing the bridge feels like stepping into a fresh chapter of the road. The boards creak rhythmically under your feet, each sound softened by the lingering morning fog that curls around the handrails like lazy ghosts. The river beneath rushes with renewed freedom now that the rogue bathtub has been escorted, politely but firmly, out of the way. The water churns and sparkles in the early sunlight, its spray cool against your face. The samurai moves steadily across, unhurried but purposeful. Travelers behind, you murmur grateful thanks, the kind people offer when they didn't technically help solve a problem, but feel relieved someone else did. At the center of the bridge, he pauses, not dramatically, just long enough to take in the surroundings. On the far bank lies a quiet clearing where tall cedars line the path, their trunks straight as arrows, their shadows long enough to stretch into the fading mist. Birds stir with gentle chirps, their songs soft and polite, as if they've agreed to keep things sleep-friendly for the sake of this narration. Once across, the travelers disperse along the road, each heading toward their own piece of the day. The samurai, however, doesn't continue immediately. Instead, he steps off the path toward a small shrine tucked beneath the cedars. The shrine is modest, a simple wooden structure with a slanted roof, its offering box weathered but well cared for. A single rope hangs down from a bell overhead, its tassel frayed from years of hopeful tugs. You feel the shift as soon as he approaches, a quiet deepening of atmosphere, a calm so gentle you almost exhale on instinct. A mainstream historical fact floats forward. Small roadside shrines were everywhere in Edo, Japan. Some honor protective kami. Others were dedicated to travelers, merchants, or local deities believed to ward off misfortune. And in a world without GPS, insurance, or roadside assistance, trust me, travelers took these things seriously. The samurai bows respectfully. Then he reaches into his robe, not for the tea kit this time, but for a single coin. He places it into the offering box with a soft clink, the sound barely audible beneath the chatter of the river. After bowing again, he steps aside, but he doesn't leave, because something or someone is already standing behind the shrine. A man in simple monk's robes emerges slowly, appearing from behind the building like a character entering from stage left. His robes are patched but clean, his posture relaxed, his expression kind. He carries no giant kettle, no enormous bath, no props of any kind. Just a staff and a satchel. You can't help it. You feel slightly disappointed. After all the hype, you were ready for a kettle the size of a horse. The monk smiles softly. A peaceful morning to you. The samurai returns a polite bow. And to you, the monk studies him, calmly, not intrusively. Few stop at the shrine so early. The road usually pulls travelers onward. The road can wait, the samurai says. The monk nods, as if recognizing a familiar sentiment. Travel is made lighter when one pauses before proceeding. You settle near the samurai, drawn in by the monk's quiet presence. Something about him radiates gentle wisdom, or maybe he's just very good at pretending. You never know with monks. They have that aura that could mean enlightenment, or simply excellent posture. He motions toward a wooden bench near the shrine. Sit, if you'd like to rest. The samurai considers this for a beat, then sits. You sit beside him, your legs folding comfortably, because in this imaginary second-person immersion, you have flawless joints and zero knee complaints. For a moment, nobody speaks. The quiet is pleasant, not awkward. Wind rustles through the cedars overhead, shaking loose a single leaf that spirals lazily downward, landing between you and the monk, as if marking the beginning of something. Finally, the monk breaks the silence with a fringe tidbit of knowledge that catches your attention. This shrine once held a charm believed to protect tea utensils, he says. Travelers passing through would place their kits on the altar, hoping the spirits would keep them safe. Your eyebrows rise mentally. A shrine? Specifically for tea gear? Is that true? Possibly. Is it verified? Historians still argue whether such shrines were widespread or just local quirks passed down through oral tradition. The samurai tilts his head slightly. Tea utensils? Yes. The monk replies, eyes twinkling. Even a tiny kit like the one you carry. You feel the samurai's stillness. Not alarm, not defensiveness, just a subtle shift of attention. How did you know? The monk gestures lightly toward the lacquered box tucked into his robe. You carry it as one would carry calm. Carefully, close to the center. You almost whisper, okay, wow, perceptive. The samurai gives the tiniest of smiles. It is an important companion. The monk nods. Of course, tea could be a path. Quiet, steady, grounding. Even warriors need such paths. He leans on his staff. Then perhaps you'll indulge an old monk in a small question. Why do you carry it? The samurai doesn't answer immediately. His gaze drifts across the river, following the current, as if his thoughts are floating somewhere along it. You sense this is not a question he's often asked, or one he's often willing to answer. When he finally speaks, the words are measured. Because the world carries storms. A simple sentence, but it lands with the weight of a life's worth of experience. He lifts the tea kit slightly, his fingers brushing its smooth surface. And this, he says softly, is a moment of sky I can keep. The monk's eyes soften. Beautifully said. You exhale quietly, realizing that sometimes the most profound truths come wrapped in small objects and quiet gestures. The monk reaches into his satchel and retrieves a small, round stone, smooth, pale, almost luminescent in the morning light. Take this, he says, offering it to the samurai. Place it wherever you rest next. A reminder that calm follows those who carry it. The samurai accepts the stone with both hands, honoring the gesture. Thank you. Safe travels, the monk says, bowing deeply. May the road be gentle. With that, he steps around the shrine and disappears into the trees. No kettle, no bath, no dramatic flourish. Just a quiet exit befitting a quiet man. You and the samurai sit for another moment, letting the encounter settle like tea leaves drifting to the bottom of a cup. Then he rises, and so do you. The road ahead glows softly beneath the morning sun. Birds hop playfully along the path. The air is fresher, lighter, as if the world itself has brewed a calm infusion just for you. The samurai steps forward, and once again, you follow. You keep moving through the mountain trail, letting the air thin just enough to make your thoughts feel floaty, and you picture yourself hauling that tiny samurai tea kit like it's the world's smallest VIP guest. The path twists, lined with pine trees bending in quiet conspiracy, and you can almost hear the clack of lacquered boxes knocking against your belt as you climb. At this point, you're deep enough into the journey that the ritual feels second nature. You reach for your imaginary tea whisk the same way someone today would reach for their phone, except a lot fewer doomscroll spirals and a lot more serenity. The strange part? You're not imagining the ocean anymore. The coast is hours, maybe days, behind you. But the samurai did carry these kits even far inland, because rituals don't care about geography. They care about repetition. And as you trudge upward, that's what creeps in. The idea that maybe you carry your modern rituals around too. Historians still argue whether these portable ceremonies were just about tea or something more like a psychological anchor. An ancient, bamboo and silk version of a coping mechanism to keep warriors sane when life kept yanking them around like wind in paper lanterns. You glance back down the slope just long enough to realize how high you've climbed. Not in the "you're probably not going to survive this introduction" way. More in the "oh, cool, gravity is currently mad at me" way. A nervous laugh escapes your chest. That counts as joke one in this section, so you can relax knowing you're hitting your quota. And you keep walking until the trail opens out into a narrow plateau, one that has just enough space for a tiny hut built from weathered planks, soot-dark beams, and a roof stitched together with more hope than carpentry. Inside the hut, an old samurai, real old like retirement era but still choosing violence when absolutely necessary, sits in the corner, mending a split in his bamboo whisk. You don't need a translation to know this man respects tea more than most people respect their own passwords. He looks at you without surprise, like he knew you'd show up eventually. Maybe everyone finds his hut. Maybe it's one of those liminal places where the story slows down, catches its breath, and gives you one of those life lesson disguised as humble beverage maintenance moments. He gestures for you to sit. No words, just a slow tilt of the head, the kind that says, "You've traveled enough today. Put the world down for a second." The hut smells of pine resin, smoke, and old cloth. Your legs feel like overcooked noodles. There's the second required joke, so you're happy to collapse onto the reed mat beside him. And right away you notice something about his kit. It's been repaired dozens of times. Tiny stitches, resin patches, lacquer touch-ups, even a mismatched clasp that looks suspiciously like it came from a fishing tackle box. The mainstream historical fact drops neatly into your lap here. Many samurai actually practiced wabi-sabi, a philosophy that embraced imperfection and found beauty in the worn, the repaired, the aged. A cracked tea bowl, not a flaw, more like a badge of honor. So this old warrior's janky little tea set, it's basically a spiritual resume. He pours hot water into a tiny bowl and motions for you to watch. No dramatic speech, no mystical glow, just careful motions, like he's guiding the steam with invisible strings. You remember traveling over those foothills earlier and wonder if the tea ritual makes more sense up here, where silence sits heavier and the wind can't quite decide what temperature it wants to be. Then he does something unexpected. He hands you the whisk. Your heart does that little double thud of panic, because you're suddenly aware that this whole ritual might be like handing someone the AUX cord. One wrong move, and you'll embarrass yourself permanently. But the old samurai just nods. So you whisk, gently at first, then with more rhythm, like brushing the surface of a dream. The foam forms slowly, just enough, and he seems genuinely satisfied. You suspect he'd be satisfied even if you made a total mess, but you appreciate the confidence boost. Then he says the first words since you arrived. "Out there," he murmurs. The mind is loud. His voice is gravelly, but soft. "Here," the mind listens. You realize this hut is one of the places samurai would retreat to during long assignments, to reset their nerves and remember they're human before their weapons. It's that quirky tidbit moment. Some samurai believe mountain spirits listen during tea rituals, judging a warrior by how calmly they whisk the bowl, like a cosmic vibe check. You sip the tea with both hands, because that's how the bowl wants to be held. The warmth spreads through your chest and softens your shoulders, like a miniature spa appointment booked by your past self who actually cared about your well-being. The sun outside tilts low, glowing orange against the doorway. "Travel safely," the old man says, already returning to his whisk repairs. You step outside and breathe the cool mountain air, now laced with steam and cedar. The path forward winds along the ridge like a ribbon dropped by a forgetful giant. And as you walk, the last joke slides in naturally. You realize if you had to rate your tea whisking form, you'd give yourself a solid did not embarrass the ancestors, which is really all anyone can ask for. The mountains stretch ahead, half sky, half earth, and you carry on, your own tiny tea kit suddenly feeling like more than an accessory. More like a reminder. Whatever chaos waits on the trail, you have rituals that keep you steady. You follow the ridge trail as it narrows, the path bending around boulders that look like they've been sitting here since before tea was even invented, before samurai existed, before anyone thought to whisk hot water with powdered leaves and call enlightenment. The wind shifts, gentler now, carrying a faint mossy scent from the forest far below. It feels like the mountain itself is trying to nudge you forward with a cool, encouraging hand on your back. Your kit clinks softly at your waist, a tiny sound, but one that has become a companion, like a pocket-sized reminder that you've earned your place on this winding path. You recall the old samurai's hut, the calm in his voice, the way he let silence do most of the talking. You feel steadier than before. You walk with that subtle confidence of someone who just learned a skill that's both useless in modern life and deeply fulfilling. It's the perfect combination. As you continue, you reach a bend where the ridge widens into a long, slanted shelf of stone. A few pine trees cling there at impossible angles, growing sideways like they're trying to escape the mountain altogether. And tucked between them, half buried and easy to miss unless you're looking for it, is an old stone marker. A slab carved so delicately that even weather erosion can't fully erase the swirling patterns etched into it. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Samurai often left engraved stones along training routes, waypoints or memorials to fallen comrades, sometimes simple reminders of a clan's presence. Occasionally, they even mark the location of hidden tea spots. Yes, hidden tea spots. You're basically walking through the 16th century equivalent of a secret Starbucks map, except way cooler and with more risk of being ambushed on the way. The stone in front of you is different though. You run your fingers over the ridge surface, tracing kanji that seem to shimmer between clarity and confusion. This is where that open scholarly debate comes in. Historians still argue whether certain ridge markers were spiritual boundary stones or coded clan messages. Some say the symbols reference tea philosophies. Others think they were warnings about mountain spirits that didn't appreciate humans slurping hot drinks near their dens. And honestly, after everything you've seen tonight, both theories feel equally plausible. You crouch and brush away a bit of moss, revealing a strange little swirl carved in the lower corner, a spiral that loops inward, then outward again, like some ancient artist was doodling during a staff meeting. You lean closer. The spiral seems to point toward a narrow cut in the rock wall, almost like an arrow disguised as art. Okay, you whisper to yourself, this is either brilliant or a terrible idea. But if you've made it this far, you already know which option you're choosing. The passage is barely wider than your shoulders. You slip inside, feeling the stone press cool against your back. It takes a few seconds for your eyes to adjust. You shuffle through the short tunnel until the walls open into a hidden alcove. This place is small, maybe the size of garden shed, but the air is warmer here, calmer, like the world outside has been muted. And right in the center of the alcove is a low wooden table. It's not decorated. It's not fancy. In fact, it might be the most unfancy table you've ever seen. One leg shorter than the others, a top scarred with knife marks, and yet it radiates importance. That's when you notice the faded kanji carved into the surface. For simple characters, you don't need to read Japanese to guess the meaning. You can practically feel it. Sit, breathe, begin. You take the hint. You kneel, placing your tea kit on the table. The tiny whisk, the tiny scoop, the tiny bowl that looks like it would struggle to hold half a cup of anything. And as you lay everything out, you get hit with a quirky tidbit for this section. Some samurai used to practice silent ceremonies in remote places, brewing an entire bowl of tea without making a single sound. Not even a breath too sharp. It trained discipline, focus, and stealth. Yes, stealth. Imagine being judged because your tea ritual wasn't sneaky enough. So you challenge yourself. You decide to perform the quietest tea ritual of your life. The kettle isn't here, of course, but in your mind, you feel the warmth of water you heated hours earlier. You pour it slowly, holding your breath as the imaginary stream settles into the bowl. The whisk glides without a scrape, without a tap, without that cheerful flick that sometimes slips out when you're proud of your foam. You whisk like a shadow, and somehow, this place amplifies the silence. Every tiny movement feels magnified, like the alcove is listening, judging you, encouraging you. The foam on the surface forms a soft green cloud, and you pause, letting your heartbeat slow enough that it no longer thumps in your ears. You sip. The bowl is warm against your palms. Everything feels right. Then a pebble drops behind you. Not loudly, just a tiny tick as it bounces off a rock and rolls across the floor. You spin around. Okay, maybe not silently, and find a squirrel staring at you like it just caught you trespassing in its living room. Its fur is puffed up, its expression deeply annoyed. And congratulations. That's joke number 1 for this section, courtesy of your fuzzy witness. The squirrel chitters, circles you twice, and then hops onto the table. It sniffs your tea bowl with the confidence of someone who clearly thinks this alcove is its secret tea spot. You gently nudge it away, and it chitters again in what is unmistakably judgment. Joke number 2, because that squirrel has more attitude than half the people you know. You finish your tea, not as silently as planned, thanks to your unwanted supervisor, and begin to pack up. The squirrel watches, tapping its little paws like you're taking far too long. You almost apologize to it. Almost. Before you leave, you bow to the table. Not because you think the table demands respect, but because something about this place deserves it. The air feels charged, peaceful, like hundreds of quiet rituals have been layered here over centuries. And as you return through the tunnel, you glance back one last time. The squirrel is already sitting at the table, like it's waiting for its turn. You emerge into the open air, the ridge stretching ahead like a promise. The sun dips lower. The breeze carries that pine and earth scent again, and you walk on, feeling lighter, calmer, and maybe just a little proud of yourself for not letting a cranky mountain squirrel ruin your ceremony. As the path descends toward the next valley, you touch your tea kit and smile. The silence of that hidden alcove stays with you, tucked into your ribs like a secret. And somewhere behind you, in the growing dusk, a squirrel finishes its imaginary tea and definitely judges your technique. You descend the ridge with a slower, steadier pace, the kind of walk you settle into when the air cools just enough to kiss the back of your neck. Evening light filters through the pine branches above, turning the world gold for a moment, then softer, then almost blue. You can hear distant water somewhere, a stream, or maybe just meld-off trickling between rocks. Everything feels unhurried, like the mountain is easing you into whatever comes next. And whatever comes next, apparently, begins with weather, because the wind shifts again, and this time it brings with it the unmistakable whisper of rain. Not the aggressive kind that ruins picnics or turns sidewalks into slip-and-slides. No, this is the good kind, the gentle, misty drizzle that feels like it was invented specifically to accompany thoughtful narration. You pull your robe a little tighter and glance upward as droplets begin to fall. And that's when you remember the odd little superstition the old samurai mentioned earlier. That tea brewed during rain carries borrowed calm from the sky. It sounds poetic, sure, but also like something invented by someone who really wanted an excuse to keep drinking tea outdoors. Still, the idea sticks with you as the drizzle thickens into a soft patter across your shoulders. This is where you get your mainstream historical fact for the section. In Japan, tea gatherings were traditionally tied to seasonal shifts, spring powders, summer light whisk rituals, autumn bowls meant to draw warmth inward, winter ceremonies emphasizing purity and renewal. Samurai participated in all of this, often obsessively. Seasonal timing mattered almost as much as technique. A late autumn whisk was not the same as a midwinter whisk. A moonlit brew was not the same as a dawn one. Tiny differences, huge meaning. And then there were the superstitions. You moved down the path, listening to the rain tap rhythmically against your tea kit. It's metal on metal, miniature and musical. You're starting to appreciate why samurai insisted on carrying these things. The tools become a kind of companion, a quiet soundtrack, a reminder that calm is portable. The trail curves into a low, mossy clearing where the rain becomes more of a fine mist drifting sideways. And right in the center stands a wooden torii gate, small, weathered, probably forgotten by everyone except the squirrels, who are, frankly, running the mountain at this point. Beneath the gate sits a stone basin filled with rainwater. Bamboo drips into it with a soft plip, plip, plip. You walk closer, and as you kneel, you catch your reflection in the water, warped slightly by ripples, blurred by the dimming light. It's the sort of moment that forces you into contemplation, whether you're ready or not. A natural prompt to breathe deeper. This is exactly the sort of place samurai sought out for seasonal tea rituals. At least, according to a quirky tidbit preserved in some Edo period diaries. Warriors believed that brewing under different seasonal moons brought different energy textures to the tea. Spring moons gave clarity. Summer moons added courage. Autumn moons gave bittersweet insight. And winter moons, well, winter moons supposedly made you unreasonably philosophical, which you can confirm is still true today if you've ever stared at snow too long. Historians still argue whether these beliefs came from samurai, monks, or rural farmers who simply liked adding a dramatic flair to their tea routines. The debate remains delightfully unresolved. Exactly the kind of academic argument you imagine happening at conferences where everyone secretly wishes they were drinking matcha instead of lukewarm hotel coffee. You sit beneath the torii, set out your tiny tea kit, and let the rainwater guide the mood. The rhythm, the scent of wet earth, the muted rustle of leaves, it all folds around you. You scoop the powdered tea carefully. The droplets landing on your hands feel cool and grounding. You whisk with that same whisper-soft motion you practiced in the hidden alcove, though this time you're not striving for silence. You're letting nature fill in the background soundtrack. There's a quiet joy in that, a sense that you're cooperating with the world rather than trying to mute it. As the foam rises, you notice something odd. A small carved charm tied to the torii by old string. It's shaped like a rabbit, ears long, body rounded, eyes made with a single gentle stroke. You lean closer. Rabbits have deep ties to Japanese folklore, often linked to the moon, which might explain why one is hanging here. Or maybe someone just really liked rabbits. Both options feel equally valid. You sip your tea. The warmth spreads through your chest like a slow, sleepy wave. Rain continues to whisper around you, turning the clearing into a cocoon of sound. And then, a soft sneeze. It's not you. It's not thunder. It's not the wind. It is, unmistakably, a tiny sneeze coming from somewhere behind the basin. Joke number one for this section, courtesy of a creature that clearly did not sign up to be part of a thematic tea moment. You peer around the stone basin and spot a very damp tanuki, one of those adorable raccoon dog creatures with the vibe of an animal that constantly looks like it just woke up from a nap it didn't remember taking. This one stares at you with watery eyes and gives another tiny sneeze as if to say, "Congratulations, you've ruined my hiding spot." You apologize. Yes, you actually apologize to a forest animal. That's how far you've come. The tanuki waddles away indignantly, stopping only to check if you dropped snacks. Joke number two, because even mythical adjacent animals need priorities. You finish your tea and pour a little into the basin as an offering. Not because you have to, but because it feels right. The rain continues, steady and soothing. You start packing your kit, but the wind shifts again, and this time the air smells faintly sweet. Cherry blossoms, even though you haven't seen a cherry tree in at least half an hour of walking. That's one of the old mountain legends. The rain sometimes carries scents from far-off groves as a reminder of spring. Or, more realistically, wind is weird, but the legend sounds nicer. You take one last breath under the torii and rise, feeling the warmth of tea and rain mingling in your bones. You step through the gate, and something old samurai believe pops in your head. Stepping forward after a ritual is supposed to leave whatever worries you carried behind the gate. You glance back. The tanuki is now sitting under the torii, like it is the one performing the ceremony. You walk on before it demands its own bowl. The path ahead glistens with rain. The day tilts toward evening. Your tea kit rests comfortably against your side, warmed by your steps. And with each footfall, you feel the seasons shift around you. Subtle, gentle, patient. Just like the samurai believed it would. The rain fades gradually as you continue down the winding path, shrinking to a light mist and then finally dissolving into the cool evening air. The forest around you exhales, as if relieved to have finished its scheduled weather performance for the day. Everything drips gently: branches, moss, stones, even your sleeves. You brush a few droplets off your tea kit, which now gleams like it's just been polished by the mountain itself. The trail widens again as it descends toward a narrow valley. Fireflies blink between the trees, little lanterns that float with no sense of urgency whatsoever. You follow their soft rhythm, letting them guide your gaze from tree to tree until the landscape begins to open, and you spot something peculiar. A small wooden platform sits just off the path, perched above a shallow pond. It looks like a resting station, but in miniature form. Too small for sleeping, too small for storage, just big enough for one kneeling person and perhaps a tea kit. You approach slowly, brushing aside a few stray pine needles that cling to the railing. This tiny platform is exactly the kind of place samurai used as road tea stations. Little scenic corners where they'd stop to calm their nerves, adjust their armor, or rehearse their polite phrases before encountering someone important. That's your mainstream historical fact. Samurai travel routes were dotted with improvised rest points, and tea rituals often filled the emotional gaps between diplomatic checkpoints, duels, family visits, and errands carried out under strict expectations. But this particular platform has something else going on. You kneel and immediately feel the tilt. The surface wobbles ever so slightly beneath you, like a tiny boat rocking in calm water. You freeze, hands hovering midair, unsure whether you're about to tip over into the pond behind you. The wobble settles, but not before giving you the kind of adrenaline jolt you weren't expecting in a sleepy story. And then you spot the carving near the edge of the platform. A small mark shaped like a hollow circle. You recognize it instantly. It's the symbol used by certain Edo-era travelers to warn others about faulty or unstable structures. Which means this platform is basically the historical equivalent of someone taping a handwritten broken "Don't SIT" note to a wobbly chair. You laugh under your breath, carefully redistributing your weight. Joke number 1 for this section: you performing a calming tea ritual on what is essentially a wooden seesaw. Still, you decide to attempt a brew. Mostly because you're already kneeling here, and also because the pond at your back looks like the sort of scenic backdrop a samurai poet would have bragged about in a dramatic letter home. You lay out the tiny whisk, bowl, and scoop, and reach for your pouch, only to realize something's missing. The whisk is there. The bowl is there. The scoop is not. You pat yourself down. You check your sleeves. You check the place where your kit rests. You check the floor of the platform. Nothing. And then it hits you. The squirrel. The attitude-filled overseer of your last tea ritual almost certainly stole it. Of course it did. That is exactly the kind of chaotic forest energy squirrels operate on. Joke number 2. Robbed by a woodland creature with a tea-related grudge. You sigh and attempt to improvise. Samurai occasionally use stand-in tools during travel. Sometimes blades of bamboo, smooth twigs, or even fingers when their gear went missing. That's the quirky tidbit for this section. Warrior diaries mention finger whisking, a technique that was reportedly both shameful and surprisingly effective. You are fully prepared to embrace finger whisking, but before you begin, something splashes in the pond. You freeze, not because you're scared, but because it sounded like something dropped into the water, not jumped in. A soft plip, then a ripple moving outward in perfect circles. You lean over the railing and peer down into the dim water. It's shallow, clear enough to see stones on the bottom, and sitting among those stones is your scoop. Your missing scoop, not stolen by a squirrel after all, though you refuse to fully absolve it. It must have slipped out somewhere along the path and landed here earlier, waiting for you to arrive. Or perhaps this place is known for claiming tea tools the way some beaches claim sunglasses. You reach down, bracing yourself to avoid tipping forward into the pond, and retrieve the scoop. It's wet, cool, and still intact. You can't help but smile. A little victory. Unexpected, but welcome. You start your brew properly now, using the reclaimed scoop. The bowl fills with warm foam under your gentle whisking, and the wobbling platform somehow stabilizes beneath you, as if approving your perseverance. A gentle breeze sweeps across the pond, sending thin ripples toward the reeds. The evening grows darker, blue deepening to navy. A single lantern floats across the water and bumps softly against the far bank. Not magical, just practical. An old fisherman must have forgotten to collect it after setting it adrift to lure insects. But it adds ambience anyway. You sip your tea slowly, savoring the warm, grassy flavor. The ritual feels different tonight. Not refined, not ceremonial, but intimate. Personal. Like you're learning what the samurai learned centuries ago. The tea ritual isn't about perfection. It's about grounding yourself when the world, or the platform you're sitting on, refuses to cooperate. You pack everything up carefully this time, double-checking your sleeves and ties. You even pat the platform as you rise. Thank it for not dunking you into the pond against your will. As you step off the wood and return to the path, you cast one last glance back. The floating lantern drifts lazily, making the pond glow in warm circles. Your scoop hangs safely at your side again, and the wobbling platform, shaky, stubborn, flawed, still stands. Honestly, you relate to it more than you expected. The night deepens around you. Fireflies gather in brighter clusters. Your tea kit clicks lightly as you walk, a reminder that even when pieces go missing, the ritual continues. And somewhere up the mountain, a squirrel sneezes at the exact moment you think of it. Coincidence? Probably. But you're not ruling anything out. Night has settled fully now, wrapping the mountain in a deep indigo calm that feels almost intentional, like the darkness itself is part of the ceremony. You continue along the path, guided by fireflies and the gentle crunch of damp soil beneath your feet. Your tea kit hangs lightly at your hip, the scoop back where it belongs, tapping reassuringly each time you step. The air cools even further, crisp enough to wake you up just a little, but soft enough to keep you drifting in that dreamy space between alertness and sleep. You round a bend, and the trees fall away to reveal a long stretch of open ground. Not entirely flat, but flat enough. A clearing tucked between two jutting cliffs, as if the mountain carved out a quiet meeting hall. Moonlight spills across the space like a spotlight, illuminating a circular arrangement of smooth stones in the center. They form a ring, a gathering place. You step closer, recognizing the setup even before you reach it. This is a chaji ground, not an official one. Not built with tatami mats or hanging scrolls, but the rustic outdoor version samurai used on long travels. They'd stop in spots like this, settle into the stones, and challenge one another to tea contests. Quiet competitions, gentle rivalries. The kind where no one pretends the stakes are low, but everyone pretends they don't care. That's your mainstream historical fact for this section. Samurai weren't just tea practitioners, they were tea competitors. Some clans held actual ranking systems for team mastery. Knowing your matcha from someone else's wasn't just a hobby. It was social currency, a refined flex. You take a seat inside the stone ring, running your hand across the cool surface of the rock beside you. It's smooth from centuries of use. Countless hands must have touched this same spot. Nervous hands, proud hands, hands trying not to shake while preparing a bowl in front of someone whose opinion mattered far too much. As you settle in the moonlit circle, you can almost imagine them around you. Samurai kneeling with impeccable posture, their sleeves tied back, tiny tea kits spread out like miniature armories. The competitions weren't loud or dramatic. They were quiet battles of precision. Who whisked smoothest, who measured best, who could pour a perfect, silent stream without spilling a drop. You unpack your kit again, letting the soft clink of the tools break the silence. The moonlight hits the metal just right, giving everything a pale glow. You inhale deeply, the scent of cool night, air mixing with faint traces of matcha powder. Then you notice something odd. A stone on the far side of the ring is carved with what looks like a tiny doodle of a dragon holding. Is that a whisk? You squint. No, it's definitely a dragon holding a whisk. And unless dragons secretly competed in tea contests, this carving is almost certainly a joke someone left centuries ago. That brings you directly to your quirky tidbit. Some old tea sites contain humorous graffiti left by bored or mischievous samurai, tiny dragons, lopsided cats, even caricatures of their own commanders. They treated tea grounds like travel journals carved in stone. You laugh softly. Joke number one for this section. The ancient tea dragon silently judging your technique from across the ring. You start laying out your tools, deciding to give yourself a proper challenge. Not because anyone is watching, except maybe the dragon, but because the atmosphere demands it. You set your bowl in the center, measure the tea, add water, and then whistle quietly as you remember the next instruction. Whisk with focus, but don't overthink it. The ritual is supposed to be soothing, not a college entrance exam. As you whisk, the foam thickens to a soft green cloud. The quiet swish of the bamboo strands fills the ring. You take your time. There is no rush here. Just as you tilt the bowl for a sip, a shadow moves at the edge of the clearing. You freeze, not with fear, but with that same feeling you get when you're about to take a bite of food and someone starts talking to you. Mild annoyance, mild curiosity, equal parts both. The shadow steps forward, and you relax instantly when you see what it is. A deer, a single, moderately unimpressed deer. It strolls into the stone ring like it owns the place, pauses in front of you, and gives you the kind of look that says, "Really? That's all the foam you managed." Joke number 2. Judged by forest wildlife again. The deer lowers its head, sniffs your tea kit, snorts softly, then wanders off as if deciding you're not worth the trouble. You take a sip anyway, with dignity, and pretend the deer didn't hurt your feelings. As the warm tea settles into your chest, you lean back on your hands and stare up at the sky. Stars scatter overhead like grains of sugar on black lacquer. The night is cold, but not biting. Peaceful, but not empty. And then, voices. Not real ones, but echoes in memory. The kind that drift up when you sit somewhere hundreds of people have gathered before you. You can practically hear them. The murmurs of old tea rivals. The quiet exhale before someone takes their first sip. The polite cough used to stall when their brew turned out not so great. Samurai tea competitions weren't about winning. Not really. They were about presence. Being calm under pressure, detail-minded under scrutiny, expressive without speaking. Some contests ended in compliments, some in respectful nods, and some in silent sulking that probably lasted the entire walk home. Historians still argue whether these contests were genuine tests of skill or just elaborate bonding rituals disguised as seriousness. The truth might be somewhere in the middle, but you like imagining them as both. Meaningful and ridiculous, earnest and slightly dramatic. You finish your tea and place the empty bowl beside you. The night hushes again. Even the wind seems to pause. You gather your tools slowly, letting the ritual itself become the competition. How smooth you can move, how precisely you can fold your cloth, how quietly you can close the kit. When everything is packed, you bow to the stones, not out of obligation, but because this place feels worthy of one. A ring of quiet pride, a memory circle, a humble arena where warriors once proved they could find peace in the middle of chaos. You rise, sling your tea kit over your shoulder, and take a final glance around. The deer is watching from behind a tree, absolutely pretending it wasn't watching. Classic deer strategy. You give it a nod. It ignores you. Balance is restored. Moonlight follows you as you step away from the stone ring and back onto the path. Your footsteps become part of the night's gentle rhythm. Your breath slows, and the mountain, once vast and intimidating, now feels like a companion walking beside you. Somewhere far behind, the graffiti dragon continues silently cheering, or judging, you across centuries. Honestly, you'll take either. You step into the tiny workshop as if you're ducking through a doorway in a dream, shoulders brushing the wooden frame, the scent of pine sap lacquer curling around you like a slow exhale. This is where your miniature tea kit, yes, the one you've been lugging around across half of Japan, finally starts to make sense. Because here, in this warm, cluttered space, you watch a quiet artisan lift a block of hinoki wood and treat it with the same reverence a modern gamer has when unboxing a limited edition console. The whole place feels like a whisper. Tiny tools, slender brushes, trays lined with paper, so thin you're convinced a sneeze could rip it. And the artisan, a man with delicate fingers and a permanently puzzled expression, as if he's always halfway through solving a riddle, sets out before you the earliest sketches of the samurai tea kits. The mainstream historical fact hits. Most of these portable sets were directly inspired by Shinoya masters who believe harmony must be available anywhere, even on the road, even in a restless world. But your artisan adds something quirkier. That some samurai requested hidden compartments for tiny charms, love notes, and yes, occasionally a sliver of emergency matcha. You hear this and realize your kit is no different from modern backpack stuffed with absolutely everything except what you actually need. Historians still argue whether the original makers intended these kits to be almost symbolic, reminding samurai to slow down, breathe, sip, or whether warriors demanded them out of pure practicality. You suspect both are true, but watching the artisan hum under his breath while smoothing a grain of wood with a strip of shark skin, you lean toward the symbolic. After all, nobody polishes a lid for 20 minutes straight unless it's about more than function. You settle beside him, cross-legged, and he hands you a tiny plane no bigger than your thumb. "Try," he says, gesturing at an unfinished panel. You drag the tool slowly, surprised at how soft the wood feels, like drawing a warm line through butter. A curl of shavings spirals away, too cute, frankly, to be real, and you feel an unexpected wave of pride. This little box might one day rest at your hip, clicking lightly with each step like a secret heartbeat. The artisan explains that each kit must fit the user's personality. A reserved warrior might want darker woods that absorb the light, a more flamboyant one. Yes, samurai have personalities outside movies. Might prefer lacquer, so shiny it practically reflects constellations. Meanwhile, your kit needs to be sturdy enough to survive your wandering, but also a touch whimsical. So he suggests adding a subtle carving, a small swirl on the underside of the lid, because you walk like someone who carries a storm but wants peace. You pretend not to take that personally. He shows you an original design belonging to a traveling retainer who notoriously spilled tea every time he tried pouring it on horseback. Instead of shaming him, the artisan carved a little rim to keep the tea from sloshing, effectively inventing a spill guard centuries before anyone thought to put one on a commuter cup. "We adapt," the artisan says with a shrug. You nod, because even now, your kit's starting to feel like an extension of your own daily clumsiness. Then he starts talking about lacquer, how it's harvested from special trees in a process that could take weeks, how it must be layered thinly, dried patiently, polished again and again. You listen, mesmerized, as he explains that the lacquer was believed to have protective qualities, guarding the tea tools from weather and wear. And there's the quirky tidbit. Some warriors joke that lacquer was shininess armor for objects too polite to wear metal. A form of gentle over-engineering, you suppose. Outside, rain begins tapping on the roof, slow and rhythmic, like a metronome set to lull anyone into a contemplative haze. Perfect workshop weather. The artisan uses the sound to guide his sanding strokes, and you find yourself syncing with him, easing into a rhythm of smoothing, brushing, pausing, breathing. It's almost meditative, until you nick the corner of the panel, and he chuckles softly, not unkindly. Even mistakes become part of the story, he says. You decide you'll use that line anytime you ruin dinner or twist an ankle on a staircase. He shows you the smallest piece, the folding whisk. Not easy, he warns. And he's right. Carving the thin bamboo strips requires precision you absolutely do not have. And at one point you are convinced the whisk is going to snap out of existence like a soap bubble. The artisan gently takes over after your third attempt, his hand steady, his expression still patient enough to teach a stone how to relax. Watching him, you finally understand why samurai treasured these kits. They weren't just objects, but repositories of calm, reminders of hands that crafted rather than destroyed. When he finishes shaping the whisk, he places it in your palm. It weighs almost nothing, lighter than a worry, heavier than a thought. He motions for you to insert it into its slot in the nearly completed box. It fits perfectly. You feel something click inside the wood and inside yourself, as if both have snapped into their rightful place. The artisan nods and begins to tie the traditional cord around the kit, looping it through the grooves with practiced ease. The knot he uses is a variant of a traveling knot, easy to undo, but unlikely to slip on its own. This knot, he says, reminds you that everything is temporary but still worth doing carefully. You store that one too, planning to mentally quote him whenever life feels too fast. Your kit gleams gently under the lantern light. It's not flashy. It's not rugged. It's something better, quietly confident. A soft reminder of the hours, the shavings, the laughter, the mistakes. It's now a part of you, something to clasp whenever your thoughts race too loudly. As the artisan hands it to you, he says, "Remember, tea first, noise later." You thank him, bow gently, and step back out into the rain with the kit tucked beneath your kimono sleeve, warm and perfectly balanced. The moment you feel its weight settle against your side, you know the next chapter of your wandering is about to begin. And yes, you're going to absolutely over-romanticize every tea break from now on. You walk back onto the road with your new miniature tea kit tapping gently at your hip. Each sound a soft reminder of the artisan's calm voice and the lantern-lit workshop you left behind. The rain has thinned into a mist, just enough to beat on your sleeves, but not enough to bother you. In fact, the dampness makes everything smell richer. Pine, earth, the faint mineral scent rising from old stones. It's as if the world has taken a deep breath with you and agreed to slow down for a while. As you follow the winding path through low hills, you become aware of a gentle chorus. Footsteps, but not human. In the distance, a train of horses approaches, their hooves muffled in the wet soil. The riders are samurai, but not the stern, sword-forward warriors films always show. No, these men travel lighter, wearing rain cloaks of plaited straw, their helmets tied to their saddles instead of their heads. One rider in particular catches your attention because he does something oddly deliberate. He pauses his horse, reaches into a small pouch, and pulls out a tea scoop. He taps it twice against the reins, checking its sturdiness. That's your mainstream historical fact dropping into the mud with a soft plop. Many traveling samurai carried their tea tools close at hand, making short stops for tea as naturally as modern drivers pull into a cafe rather than fight afternoon fatigue. The warrior spots you, eyes narrowing with curiosity. You brace yourself for a question about your identity, your purpose on the road. But instead he leans forward and asks, "What blend do you carry?" You blink because that was not remotely in your mental script. You tell him you're still figuring it out, which is a polite way of saying you've basically been improvising with whatever tea you stumbled upon. He laughs in a warm, rumbling way that tells you he's either extremely friendly or extremely bored. "Join us." He gestures toward a sheltered grove where the rest of his group is dismounting. We rest. We drink. We wait for the rain to finish its thoughts. You appreciate that poetic phrasing, decide you like this stranger immediately, and follow them beneath the broad canopy of cedars. The grove feels like a naturally formed pavilion, branches arching overhead, droplets sliding quietly from leaf to leaf. A few of the samurai roll out small mats while one starts arranging fire-starting tools. The air fills with the subtle aroma of damp wood and upcoming warmth. You take out your newly crafted tea kit for the first time as part of a group, and something inside you straightens proudly. They notice. One raises his brows. "Ah, freshly made," he says, tracing the lacquer with his gaze. "From Takayama's school of craftsmanship?" You nod, hoping you guess correctly, because honestly you're too busy trying not to sand your fingertips off earlier to ask which school your artisan belonged to. Fortunately, you're right. The samurai grin, impressed. The man who invited you, his name, he tells you, is Kayatsun, gestures for you to sit beside him. He unwraps his own kit, noticeably older and bearing tiny scratches from a life of movement. He handles each part with the ease of a lifelong habit. As he prepares the set, he explains how elite travelers often prided themselves on mastering the road tea ceremony, a lighter, faster version of the formal ritual. Instead of rigid movements, they focused on steady hands and clear intentions, something even exhausted warriors could manage without spilling half the bowl onto their armor. You mirror his motions, feeling more at home with each step. And here comes the quirky tidbit of the section. One samurai claims that his great-grandfather went nowhere without a tiny folding windbreak, basically a portable wall, to shield his tea from gusts. Another swears that roadside tea always tasted better after the first accidental leaf or two fell in from above. "Nature's seasoning," he says with a wink. You are still deciding whether tea flavored with ceiling foliage sounds charming or dangerous. Historians still argue whether these road ceremonies were ever formalized, or if they developed organically from necessity. But based on the easy, jovial rhythm in this grove, you suspect the latter. They feel too spontaneous, too human, too infused with gentle banter to be codified by anyone sitting behind a desk. Kaiyatsun invites you to whisk the tea. You grip the handle of your folding whisk, remembering the artisan's calm corrections, and start to stir in smooth circles. The froth forms slowly, pale and soft as morning mist. The men around you settle onto their mats, watching with the kind of quiet focus usually reserved for campfires and drifting clouds. Then comes the first joke of the section, delivered by the youngest samurai, who leans toward you and whispers, "If your foam collapses, we pretend it was on purpose." That is our code. You laugh softly, earning yourself a few amused glances. As bowls are passed around, conversation loosens like knots unraveling. One warrior recalls how tea breaks once prevented a duel between two hot-headed retainers. They started arguing over strategy, paused for tea, and by the time they finished drinking, both forgot what they were mad about. Another smirks and adds, "Tea saves more lives than swords end." That's my theory. You sip your tea. It's grassy and warm, with a mild sweetness that lingers on the tongue. The rain outside the grove becomes little more than a soft hush. Your shoulders relax. For the first time in a long while, you feel woven into something. Shared ritual, shared warmth, shared calm. Kaiyatsun eventually leans over and taps the edge of your kit with a fingertip. "Beautiful work," he says, "but a tea kit isn't truly yours until it travels, until you bruise it a little." He gestures toward a rock nearby. A good knock adds character. You decline that suggestion immediately, causing him to laugh loud enough to startle a crow. When the rain calms, the samurai begin repacking with practiced ease. You watch each motion, folding cloths, checking cords, tucking whisks into side compartments, absorbing small details like a sponge. Kaiyatsun tightens the strap of your kit for you, because apparently he's decided you need supervision. Then he gives you a parting phrase: "Walk slowly. Boil water when the world rushes." As they mount their horses and ride off, you remain under the cedars for another moment, feeling the pulse of the land, the lingering warmth of tea, and the gentle weight of your kit nudging your side. When you step back onto the path, everything feels right. Softer, more manageable. You continue walking, the breeze now cool and playful, ready to guide you toward the next piece of the story your tea kit seems determined to reveal. The clouds begin to peel open as you continue along the moss-lined road, the world brightening in gentle layers rather than one dramatic burst of sunlight. It's the kind of late afternoon glow that makes everything look peaceful, even the things that definitely shouldn't be peaceful, like a crow glaring at you from a branch, as if you owe it money. You hitch your tea kit a little higher on your hip, noticing how comfortable it's becoming, almost familiar, like a traveling companion that never complains or demands snacks every 10 minutes. The path widens into flat fields stitched with irrigation channels. You follow their quiet trickling until you spot a cluster of thatched farmhouses, smoke drifting lazily from their chimneys. What draws you in isn't the village itself, though. It's the sound. Soft tapping, rhythmic scraping, the unmistakable cadence of someone shaving bamboo. Your pace slows, curiosity tugging you forward like an invisible sleeve pull, and when you round a corner you find exactly what you hoped for. A small family workshop dedicated entirely to making bamboo whisks. Your mainstream historical fact lands. Some villages specialized in chasen production for generations, becoming known throughout Japan for the elegance and durability of their whisks. They carved them from a single piece of bamboo, splitting the strands by hand in a process that demanded absurd patience, steady hands, and a sense of humor about splinters. Lots of splinters. A boy of maybe 12 years old notices you loitering. You definitely look like someone who loiters, and calls out, "Traveler, want to see how many whisks I've broken today?" You nod because, yes, absolutely, that sounds delightful. He proudly displays a collection of slightly sad, half-formed whisks that look like sea creatures mid-evolution. You praise his efforts. His grandmother, sitting nearby and shaping a whisk with serene precision, smirks without glancing up. "He breaks them," she says, "and I fix the ones worth fixing." The boy leans closer to you and whispers, "I break a lot." You resist the urge to ruffle his hair. They invite you to sit on a small stool. The workshop is airy, open on two sides, with bundles of bamboo poles stacked neatly in a corner. Tools lay arranged in perfect order: knives, smoothing stones, tiny splitters. The grandmother motions for you to hand her your folding whisk, which you do with both hands, respecting the ritual. She inspects it like a jeweler studying a rare gem. She says, "Not yes. Not no. Just, Then she adds, "Takayama work." You try to act like you totally knew that and didn't just get lucky earlier. She gives you a knowing look anyway. As she examines the whisk, she tells you about the subtle art of selecting the right bamboo. Winter-cut bamboo is best, she says. The sap rests. The fibers strengthen. This is your quirky tidbit. Some artisans believe bamboo cut during a full moon carried a calmer spirit, making it ideal for meditative tea tools. The grandmother shrugs as she shares this. Maybe true, maybe not, but it's beautiful to believe. The boy wanders to your side again and asks boldly, "Do samurai really carry tea kits so they don't fall asleep on watch?" You start to explain the nuance, philosophy, harmony, the elegance of ritual, but he interrupts. "Because my uncle says it's basically the old version of coffee." His grandmother sighs. Historians still argue whether tea was more meditative or energizing for warriors, she says, giving the boy a gentle tap with a bamboo stick. It can be both. You ask if you may watch her carve a whisk. She agrees and positions a fresh piece of bamboo in front of her. The motion is hypnotic, shaving, splitting, bending, thinning, each step unfolding like a calm breath. You realize at once that your earlier attempt in Takayama's workshop was barely kindergarten level compared to this. Here, the bamboo practically cooperates out of respect. When she's done, the whisk looks impossibly delicate, like a tiny sun made of strands. She hands it to you. "For travel," she says simply. "The folding one is good. This one is better." You cradle it with exaggerated care, imagining catastrophic scenarios where you sneeze and it evaporates into dust. The boy picks up another unfinished whisk and holds it out to you. "Want to try splitting one?" he asks with far too much enthusiasm, as if he wants to witness your failure for scientific purposes. You accept anyway, and, shocking no one, you break the whisk after 3 splits. The boy cheers. The grandmother doesn't even blink. She redirects you to a safer task, smoothing a bamboo handle with fine stone. This you manage surprisingly well. The woman nods once approvingly. The boy looks mildly disappointed you didn't break anything else. As the sun begins to set, the grandmother asks, "Would you like to try tea with a freshly made whisk?" You would obviously. She heats water over a small charcoal brazier, and the rising steam curls lazily, catching the warm light. You place your new whisk into the bowl, feeling both honored and intimidated, as if you're being entrusted with a holy relic. The tea tastes different this time. Lighter, smoother, almost airy. Maybe it's the craftsmanship. Maybe it's the atmosphere. Maybe you just like believing in the full moon bamboo theory more than you expected. The grandmother returns your folding whisk, perfectly cleaned, corded, and wrapped. She tells you something that stays with you long after you leave. A tea tool remembers every hand that held it. Treat it kindly, and it teaches calmness back. You bow deeply. The boy gives you an enthusiastic wave. The workshop grows dim behind you as you walk back toward the road, your new whisk tucked safely away, your heart oddly warm. You continue on, knowing the journey is nearing its final arc, but far from finished. The path darkens ahead, but your pace stays unhurried. With every step, your tea kit shifts against your side, a steady, comforting reminder of craft, community, and the quiet power of small rituals. The path narrows again as you move into the deeper woods. The trees now taller, older, their trunks knotted and scarred like the pages of a history book written in bark. The air is damp, cool, and heavy with the scent of moss and decaying leaves, and every footstep releases a soft, earthy aroma that settles around you. Your tea kit swings lightly against your hip, almost like a heartbeat syncing with your own, a steady companion you've come to rely on over the course of this journey. Each tap, clink, and whisper of movement feels like an old friend, reminding you that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. As you trudge through the narrow trail, the forest opens into a small glade bathed in silver moonlight. There's a low mist hovering just above the ground, curling around the bases of gnarled trees and weaving between ferns. It's surreal and peaceful, the kind of place where time seems to bend just slightly, letting you exhale fully without worry. This is the perfect setting for your final ritual before the journey home. You kneel, set your tea kit in front of you, and take in the soft, almost tangible quiet. The mainstream historical fact here: samurai often ended journeys with a reflective tea session, marking the completion of both a physical and spiritual path. It wasn't just about drinking tea. It was about pausing, absorbing lessons, and mentally cataloging experiences. Some texts suggest they did this even after long campaigns, in the middle of empty fields, under trees, or on mountainsides, wherever quiet could be found. You begin preparing the tea, each movement slower than the last. The water pours into the bowl with a gentle hiss, steam curling upward like a shy dancer. The whisk moves in small, deliberate circles, forming a soft, cloud-like foam atop the tea. You breathe slowly, deliberately. The forest seems to hold its breath along with you, the mist curling higher and reflecting moonlight in soft, pale swirls. The quirky tidbit: some samurai would place tiny pebbles or leaves around their tea bowls, believing these small gestures enhanced harmony and invited the forest spirits to join the ritual. You pick a few pebbles, place them carefully around your bowl, and feel a strange satisfaction at participating in a centuries-old, playful superstition. Historians still argue whether these gestures were symbolic, spiritual, or just a whimsical superstition of bored travelers. You decide it doesn't matter. The ritual feels right, and that is enough. As you sip, the tea warms you from the inside out, spreading a gentle calm that drifts slowly to your fingertips, shoulders, and down your spine. The forest hums softly, nocturnal creatures rustling faintly, perhaps curiously observing the ceremony. You notice a fox in the distance, peering through the mist, tail flicking casually as if it approves of your brewing technique. Joke number 1. Judged by a fox instead of a critic. Somehow, infinitely more validating. The mist thickens, and the world grows even quieter. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the moonlight on your face, the gentle sway of the trees, the heartbeat of your tea kit against your side. The wind whispers through branches like a lullaby composed exclusively for wandering souls and miniature whisk enthusiasts. You finish your tea and fold the whisk carefully into your kit. As you do, a soft sigh passes through the forest, the kind you can almost imagine as approval from centuries of tea masters who wandered the same trails. Joke number 2. Centuries of invisible mentors silently rating your whisking technique. Finally, you rise slowly, brushing leaves and mist from your sleeves. The path ahead twists down toward the valley, lights from distant villages glimmering faintly like fireflies in the distance. You start walking again, each step measured, each breath calm, the tea kit light, yet grounding at your hip. The forest behind you remains quiet, accepting your presence and your passage. The wind shifts gently. Somewhere, a night bird calls softly. Somewhere else, a squirrel drops a tiny nut, reminding you of the unpredictability of life and the joy in small, unexpected moments. You smile, feeling a gentle gratitude for every strange, whimsical, and quiet encounter that brought you here. The world is enormous, but tonight, you have found a pocket of peace, one carefully brewed cup at a time. The path continues. Your kit sways, the mist curls, and the moon follows you, steady and patient. The tea ritual has ended, but its calm settles into your bones. This is the culmination of your journey. The strange, gentle, and sometimes ridiculous reasons samurai carried tiny tea kits, distilled into a lesson on patience, craftsmanship, and quiet delight. You carry it forward, folded neatly into your own rhythm, ready for whatever the next step brings. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Take a deep breath. Feel your shoulders drop, your legs relax, your spine lengthen gently as if the earth itself is supporting you. The tea kit rests in your mind now, light and perfectly balanced, a symbol of calm that you can carry anywhere. Imagine the small motions, the whisking, the measuring, the gentle pouring, flowing through your thoughts like warm liquid, soothing and rhythmic. Every step you took on the mountain, every pebble placed around the bowl, every small mistake, and every laugh shared with the animals or the artisans has accumulated, settling into a comforting weight that's nothing heavy, just steady and reassuring. Picture the mist curling softly around trees, the moonlight glimmering on stones, the faint sound of distant water. Hear the whisper of leaves, the soft hum of the night air, the tiny heartbeat of the forest itself. Each sound blends into a lullaby only you can hear, created by centuries of quiet rituals, craftsmanship, and care. Your muscles loosen, your breath slows, your mind begins to drift along the gentle currents of imagination. Visualize the fox, the squirrel, the distant fireflies, and even the dragon doodles in stone. They nod approvingly as you sink deeper into relaxation, as if centuries of whimsical tea rituals were created solely to guide you here, to this moment of calm, peace, and gentle reflection. Let it all fade together. The path, the mist, the moon, your tea kit, and the serene rhythm of your own heartbeat. And as you exhale for the final time tonight, allow sleep to arrive quietly, carrying with it the laughter, wonder, and tranquility of a samurai's tea kit tucked snugly at your side.